don't work. So you got to make sure that your risk assessments correlate to the type of project you're dealing with. Risk assess each project individually. That means gathering around the key stakeholders, be it the lead agency, cooperating agencies, participating agencies, your brilliant consultants. Gather around the table and do a good risk assessments. Weight the risks that may be potentially that you may potentially face, and come up with an approach to deal with each aspect of the risk. Then you know your big issues. You know your risks. How else would you come up with a realistic schedule? So many schedules don't account for the risk, and so there are a lot of unrealistic schedules out there for whatever reason, and because there's so many unrealistic schedules out there, guess what? They think your project's being delayed because you're not meeting that unrealistic schedule. That's the mindset about delay. No, the project's not delayed based on a realistic schedule. The schedule that you may have may not be based in what is profound to the project and the risk that's associated with that project. It's based on someone's idea of what the project schedule should be. So there's the inherent risk of someone declaring that your project's delayed when it's really not. Okay, this is pretty simple, and I have a lengthy handout for you. And it's called the rationale for determining what causes NEPA actions require consideration and evaluation of direct and indirect effects. What this document does is it explains precisely what you're trying to accomplish with a CE, which, as I say here, a CE is only to validate that an EIS is not needed for the proposed action. That's all. It also addresses what an EA is all about. It's to determine if the proposed action, the build alternative, will result in a significant impact when compared to the no action alternative. So the EA, you can look at the broad range of potential solutions, narrow it down to a proposed action, and then evaluate that proposed action against the no action alternative to determine if there's a potential for a significant impact. Because that's all an EA is trying to determine, is there a potential for significant impact. And then EISs are the traditional documents which evaluate a broad range of reasonable alternatives to address specific needs and to reduce the potential for adverse environmental effects based on consideration of public input. And so, in here, you'll also see, because indirect effects and cumulative effects are a big issue right now, I go into what are the regulatory requirements associated with a Class 1 EIS, what are the regulatory requirements associated for an EA, and the regulatory requirements for a CE relative to indirect effects and cumulative effects, as well as the interpretive requirements based on case law that's been decided. So if you want to get a good study, and if you want to be prepared to respond to typical comments you might get from reviewers on indirect and cumulative effects, this can equip you to do a good indirect and cumulative effects and help you respond to review comments as well. The most important thing, try to avoid encyclopedic disclosure just for the sake of full but unnecessary bulletizing or bulletproofing of documents. That's a big issue in Washington. Everyone's trying to bulletproof their documents to avoid legal action. That focus has to be changed. It's causing way too many delays, and FHWA is going to try to deal with that. Actively try to promote joint reviews. The sequence of reviews takes forever, and then doing your QC at the end just kills projects. It kills the schedule. Your QC should be continuous. Your reviewers should be expecting what is in the document. There should be no surprises. Somehow we're going to have to change the review cycle process. And one of the ways they advocated in Washington was trying to do joint reviews. Try to have more coordination meetings to talk about what are the risks and how you're dealing with the risks. And then, you hear this all the time, respect the technical support data file and the administrative record. The technical support data file supports the decision that's in the document and is part of the administrative record. So properly document, cite, reference, and file all information and data that supports the decision. Avoid speculation, non-cited opinions, and subjective statements that cannot be backed up. A lot of comments that you get deal with subjective statements and opinions that have no technical support in the record or in the document itself. So try to avoid, as project managers, avoid. It's your responsibility to review the document or to delegate the review of the total document so that it reaches one document and to make sure these things are done. And then finally, quality, innovation, training. You got to have quality. You have to have quality technical studies and documentation, quality reviews, quality in your record keeping. And there's innovations that have been adopted over the years. And then your staff and you personally have to be trained to be competent NEPA practitioners and project developers. Core competencies required to produce quality NEPA documents. By the way, the last handout I have in your packet deals with how to do a quality NEPA or planning a NEPA review. I used to administer a big program up in Pennsylvania. I was the environmental manager for the GEC for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, and I had technical reviewers, and I made sure my technical reviewers abided by these principles when they reviewed the document. They're simple principles, but as you see in bold, because this is a common problem, personal presentation wording preferences are not an issue for a comment. And so I drill that into folks that will focus on not making the document perfect, because no document is ever perfect. We're trying to make it a good document, a reader-friendly document, and a document that describes and supports the recommended solution to a problem, and how the project will mitigate and enhance the environment. Keep thinking to yourself, here we are, 2010. Think, with regards to innovation, you should have in your mind, well, how is NEPA and planning going to be done 10 to 20 years from now? Don't stay static. Things change. The regulations are definitely going to change. Keep on thinking, how will we be doing NEPA and planning 10 to 20 years from now? Because back in the 1980s when I began all this work, we were doing Leroy, we didn't have GIS, we didn't have anything. We didn't have web-based management systems. Those were the good old days. But now we have a lot of new stuff, and they're continually getting new. And the Facebook and all the Twitter stuff is something that's beyond me, but it's now what the new generation is going to be using. And training. This ain't no party. This ain't no disco. This ain't no fooling around. In the words of the talking heads. NEPA is a legal process. It involves attorneys, lawsuits, very high stakes. It requires skilled, competent practitioners. Training and education are key. Unfortunately, in this economic climate that we're in, a lot of that's being scaled back. And it's going to affect project development. Questions? And do you have any ideas that I haven't covered with you as far as to making the NEPA planning process more efficient and effective? Any questions?
I do a lot of NEPA work with the Corps, and one of your slides caught my attention. It sounds like you're going to more of a, almost like an interagency, get the input from the agencies up front, and that will help streamline things. And what struck me is the Corps has been trying to do that, and now they're now going the opposite direction, because what they found was that the agencies were asking for the moon and the stars, and it was actually slowing things down. Have you guys considered that, and do you have ways to address that?